Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into Plato's Republic.
Ooh, the Republic.
Yeah, that classic philosophical text that's been debated for centuries.
Yeah.
You sent over some excerpts from the online version at classics.mit.edu, and I gotta say, it's gotten me thinking,
Right.
what does justice really mean?
Yeah.
Is it just about following the rules, or is there something deeper going on?
It's a question that's puzzled thinkers for ages, you know?
Right.
And Plato tackles it head on in the Republic. But what's so cool is he does it through dialogue.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mostly between Socrates and his friends.
Okay.
It's like we're eavesdropping
Yeah.
on a deep conversation happening thousands of years ago.
I like that. So walk me through this. How does Plato even begin to unravel this whole idea of justice?
Well, the book opens with Socrates heading to a festival with his friend Glaucon.
Okay.
They end up getting pulled into a debate about justice with a bunch of Athenians.
I see.
And each person they encounter has a totally different take on it, which I think is fascinating.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not just like a dry philosophical lecture.
No, not at all.
There's actual drama unfolding.
There is.
Who's the first person to step up to the plate with their definition?
So first we meet Cephalus,
Okay.
an elderly, wealthy guy who represents traditional values.
Got it.
He defines justice as simply telling the truth and paying your debts.
Okay. Seems pretty straightforward.
Right.
On the surface, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Be honest. Uphold your agreements.
Exactly. But then Socrates throws a wrench in the works.
Oh.
Yeah, by asking,
Hmm.
what if a friend lends you a weapon and then, in a fit of rage, asks for it back?
Oh.
Do you still return it knowing they might do something harmful?
That's a tough one.
Right.
Suddenly, Cephalus's simple definition starts to feel a bit inadequate.
It does, right.
Yeah.
It raises the question of whether there are exceptions to these seemingly straightforward rules.
Right.
Then enters Polemarchus, who inherits the argument from his father, Cephalus.
Okay.
He takes a more eye for an eye approach, arguing that justice means doing good to your friends and harm to your enemies.
Yeah, that's a pretty common sentiment even today.
It is.
We tend to want to look out for our own tribe
Yeah.
and see those outside of it as potential threats.
It's very human instinct.
It is.
But Socrates pushes back on this too.
Of course he does.
He questions how we can truly know who's a true friend or enemy,
Right.
as our judgments can be clouded by, so many things.
Yeah.
Plus, wouldn't harming someone, even an enemy, contradict the very idea of being just?
It seems like Socrates is really good at poking holes in these commonly held beliefs.
Oh, he's a master at it.
Yeah.
Getting people to think more deeply about their assumptions.
Yeah.
Then comes Thrasymachus, a sophist,
Okay.
who basically throws down a philosophical gauntlet. He's like, forget all this idealistic nonsense.
Yeah.
Justice is nothing more than the advantage of the stronger.
Whoa, that's a pretty cynical take.
It is, and it reflects the sophist's worldview. These guys were traveling teachers who often challenged traditional ideas.
I see.
They were skilled in rhetoric and argumentation.
Got it.
But some saw them as more interested in winning debates than in discovering truth.
So in Thrasymachus's view, justice is whatever those in power decide it is.
Yeah.
It's about might makes right, essentially.
It's a bleak outlook,
It is.
suggesting that justice is simply a tool used by the strong to control the weak.
Okay, so we've got these three very different definitions of justice on the table.
We do.
How does Socrates respond to Thrasymachus's bold claim?
Well, Socrates, being the champion of reason that he is,
Of course.
doesn't let Thrasymachus get away with such a simplistic view.
Okay.
He argues that true rulers, whether they're doctors, ship captains, or political leaders, shouldn't act solely out of self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
Their role is to serve the needs of those they rule.
So a doctor's interest lies in the well-being of their patient,
Right.
not just in making money or gaining prestige.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
It's about fulfilling a purpose that goes beyond personal gain.
Okay.
And this leads to a much bigger question. What is the true interest of the state and its rulers?
Wow, that's a pretty heavy question.
It is, right.
Yeah.
Should it be about power, or is there a higher purpose they should be striving for?
It seems like we're moving beyond just defining justice to thinking about what an ideal society would even look like.
You're catching on, but before Socrates dives into building his ideal state,
Oh, okay.
he gets hit with another challenge,
Oh, no.
this time from Glaucon.
All right.
Glaucon wants Socrates to prove that being just is good for the individual soul,
Okay.
not just because of external rewards or punishments.
So it's not just about being seen as just by others.
No.
It's about something deeper, something within ourselves.
Exactly.
I'm intrigued. What does Glaucon do to make his point?
He tells the story of the Ring of Gyges.
Okay.
A shepherd finds a ring that makes him invisible,
I've heard of this.
and then promptly uses it for all sorts of selfish and unjust acts.
Oh, no.
That doesn't sound good.
Glaucon's point is, if we had the power to get away with anything, would we really always choose to do the right thing?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It makes you think about whether we're just good because we're afraid of getting caught,
Right.
or if there's a genuine desire for justice within us.
Exactly. And to make matters even more complicated, Adimantus Glaucon's brother jumps in, saying that all the stories and myths we hear actually portray justice as burdensome and unrewarding, while injustice seems to bring all the perks.
So not only do we have to worry about our own selfish desires,
Right.
but we're also bombarded with messages that seem to validate those desires.
They do.
It feels like they're setting up Socrates for an impossible task here.
They definitely raise the stakes.
Yeah.
And this is what prompts Socrates to embark on his most ambitious philosophical project, constructing an ideal state in his mind. He figures if we can understand justice on a larger scale,
Okay.
in a perfectly ordered society.
It should shed light on justice within the individual soul.
So it's like he's creating a blueprint,
Yeah.
a model, to help us understand what true justice could look like,
Exactly.
both in society and within ourselves.
You got it.
I'm excited to see where this goes.
Me too.
So last time we left off with Socrates about to build this ideal state.
Yeah.
As a way to understand justice on a larger scale, it's ambitious to say the least.
It is.
Where does he even begin?
He starts with the basics.
Yeah.
You know, a simple functional city where everyone has a specialized role.
Okay.
Farmers, builders, weavers, you name it.
Right.
It's all about fulfilling essential needs
Okay.
and working together harmoniously.
Sounds pretty idyllic.
It does.
But I'm guessing things don't stay simple for long.
You're right. Socrates quickly realizes that even this utopian society needs protection.
Okay.
Enter the Guardians,
Okay.
the warrior class responsible for defending the city
Right.
from threats both internal and external.
Okay. Makes sense. You need someone to keep the peace and protect the city from invaders.
Right.
But wouldn't just any soldier do? What makes these guardians so special?
That's where it gets really interesting. Socrates has some very specific ideas about who these guardians should be.
Okay.
They need to be courageous and fierce, of course,
Right.
but also possess a deep love of wisdom.
Wait, what? Fierce warriors who are also philosophers?
Yeah,
That seems like a total contradiction.
it does.
How can you be both a lover of knowledge and a master of combat?
It does seem paradoxical,
Mm.
but Socrates believes it's possible through careful education and training.
Okay.
He envisions a rigorous curriculum that cultivates both physical and intellectual excellence.
So it's not just about brute strength. It's about having a sharp mind and a strong moral compass as well.
Exactly.
I can see why that would be important for those entrusted with protecting the city.
Right, and Socrates goes even further
Okay.
by suggesting that certain stories and music should be censored from the Guardian's education. Yeah, he wants to eliminate anything that portrays gods as deceitful,
Okay.
heroes as greedy, or death as something to be feared.
Wow, that's a pretty strict approach to education.
It is.
But I guess he's trying to create an environment where the guardians are exposed only to the most virtuous influences.
Precisely, he believes that these tales and melodies shape the soul,
Okay.
and that exposing the Guardians to negative or immoral content could corrupt their character.
It's like he's saying that what we consume, whether it's stories or music or even the news, can have a profound impact on who we become.
He's definitely ahead of his time in recognizing the power of media and culture to shape our values and beliefs.
This is getting me thinking about how much we're bombarded with messages today.
Yeah.
Often without even realizing it. Maybe we should be more mindful of what we're letting into our minds and hearts.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
It's about being critical consumers of information
Right.
and choosing to focus on what uplifts and inspires us
Yeah.
rather than what drags us down.
Okay, back to Socrates and his ideal state.
Yeah.
So he's created this class of warrior philosophers who are supposed to be the guardians of justice and wisdom.
Right.
What else does he have in store for these guardians?
Well, he proposes something truly radical. Communal living, no private property,
Okay.
and a shared family structure.
Hold on, communal living, no families, that sounds pretty extreme.
It is.
I can't imagine many people would be happy giving up their personal possessions
Right.
and family ties.
It's definitely a controversial idea.
Yeah.
And even some of Socrates' own companions push back on it.
Okay.
They argue that the guardians would be miserable living this way, deprived of the comforts and joys that others experience.
Yeah, it does seem like they'd be missing out on a lot of what makes life meaningful.
It does.
What's Socrates' reasoning behind this seemingly harsh proposal?
He believes that eliminating private property and family ties will free the guardians from selfish desires
Okay.
and ensure their loyalty to the state above all else. Their happiness, he argues, will come from fulfilling their purpose and living a life of virtue and service.
So it's all about prioritizing the common good
Right.
over individual desires. It's a noble goal, but is it even realistic?
That's a question that has been debated for centuries. But to illustrate his point, Socrates uses a powerful analogy.
Okay, I'm listening.
The well-functioning body,
Okay.
just as a healthy body, requires each organ to do its job properly.
Right.
A just state requires each class to perform its function harmoniously.
So if the guardians are driven by selfish desires or personal gain, it's like an organ going rogue
Yeah.
and disrupting the balance of the entire system.
Exactly. And this leads Socrates to his famous definition of justice in the state. Each part doing its own work
Okay.
and not meddling in the work of others.
Right.
It's all about balance, harmony, and fulfilling one's purpose within the larger whole.
It's a beautiful idea, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around how all of this relates to the individual soul. How does Socrates bridge that gap?
Well, he takes that same analogy of the well-functioning body
Okay.
and applies it to the individual soul, arguing that it's comprised of three parts:
Okay, 3 parts.
reason, spirit, and desire.
Okay, break that down for me.
All right.
What do these 3 parts represent?
Reason is the part of us that thinks logically,
Okay.
seeks knowledge, and makes wise decisions.
Got it.
Spirit is the part that's courageous, assertive,
Mm-hmm.
and driven by a sense of honor.
Okay.
And desire is the part that craves pleasure, satisfaction,
Right.
and fulfillment of our basic needs.
So it's like an internal struggle between our rational mind,
Yeah.
our emotional drive, and our basic instincts.
Okay.
We've all felt that tension within ourselves.
Exactly. And just like in the state,
Okay.
justice within the individual soul is achieved when these 3 parts are in harmony.
Okay.
Reason should rule, guided by wisdom.
Right.
Spirit should support reason,
Okay.
providing the courage to act justly. And desire should be kept in check,
Okay.
guided by temperance and a sense of balance.
So it's not about suppressing our desires entirely,
No.
but about making sure they don't rule us.
Right.
It's about finding a balance
Yeah.
where reason and virtue guide our actions.
You got it. And this is where the concept of the philosopher king comes full circle.
Okay.
In Socrates' view, the ideal ruler isn't someone who craves power or wealth,
Right.
but someone who is driven by wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and a genuine concern for the well-being of all.
It's a powerful image, a leader who's not motivated by self-interest,
Yeah.
but by a deep understanding of justice and the common good. I can see how this idea has inspired thinkers throughout history.
It has.
But is it even possible for such a ruler to exist in the real world?
That's a question we'll explore further, but before we do,
Okay.
let's delve into one of the most famous and enduring philosophical images ever.
I'm ready.
Plato's allegory of the cave.
All right.
It's a brilliant metaphor for the journey of the philosopher and the challenges of seeking truth in a world of shadows and illusions.
Okay, so we've explored Socrates' vision of this like ideal state.
Yeah.
And that fascinating idea of the soul being like a well-functioning body.
Right.
But you mentioned that Plato doesn't stop there.
He doesn't.
He actually outlines different types of government.
Right. He does. In the Republic, Socrates describes 5 distinct forms of government,
Okay.
each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And this is the fascinating part, each mirroring a particular kind of soul.
Okay, I'm really intrigued by this connection between like types of government and types of souls.
Yeah.
So let's start with what we already know.
Yeah.
The ideal state, the aristocracy led by philosopher kings.
Right.
What kind of soul thrives in this type of society?
You could say the aristocratic soul is dominated by reason,
Okay.
guided by wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and always striving for knowledge and truth.
Okay.
Just like the philosopher king, this soul seeks harmony and balance,
Right.
putting the well-being of the whole above personal desires.
It makes sense that a society ruled by wisdom would cultivate individuals who value those same qualities.
Yeah,
But we know that even the most ideal systems can, falter.
they can.
What's the next form of government on this spectrum?
Okay.
And how does the soul shift as the state changes?
So the next stage down is democracy,
Democracy.
a system where honor and military prowess are highly valued.
Okay.
Think of a society where courage, ambition, and the pursuit of glory are paramount.
So it's less about philosophical contemplation and
Yeah.
more about action, bravery, and proving oneself on the battlefield.
Exactly. In Plato's view, democracy arises when the emphasis on unity and harmony in the aristocracy starts to break down.
Right.
The love of victory and honor can lead to internal divisions and a thirst for power.
It's interesting to think how even positive qualities like courage and ambition can become distorted if they're not tempered by wisdom and a sense of justice.
It's true.
What about the individuals living in a timocracy?
Yeah.
What's the timocratic soul like?
These souls are driven by a spirited, competitive nature.
Okay.
Imagine the athlete who's always pushing for the win, or the soldier who seeks glory in battle.
Right.
They have a strong sense of honor and duty, but they can also be prone to anger and love of conflict.
So they might be brave and dedicated,
They are.
but perhaps a little less inclined towards introspection and philosophical debate.
Yeah,
It's a different kind of energy driving them.
precisely.
Yeah.
And as the focus on honor and military might intensifies,
Okay.
it can pave the way for the next stage. Oligarchy.
Oligarchy.
A system ruled by the wealthy few.
Ah, the classic rule of the rich. We see this pattern throughout history where power concentrates in the hands of those with wealth and resources.
We do.
How does this shift from democracy to oligarchy affect the soul?
In an oligarchy, wealth and material possessions become the primary measure of worth and influence.
I see.
The love of honor and duty that characterize the timocratic soul gives way to a desire for wealth,
Okay.
and the security it supposedly brings.
So we see a shift from valuing external achievements like military victories to valuing material possessions and economic success.
Right.
It's almost like the soul's focus turns inward,
Hmm.
becoming more preoccupied with personal gain.
It does.
What's the oligarchic soul like?
Imagine someone who's thrifty and hardworking,
Okay.
always striving to accumulate more wealth.
Right.
They value stability and order,
Mm-hmm.
but they can also be stingy, miserly, and constantly fearful of losing what they've acquired.
It's a soul driven by scarcity and a sense of lack,
Right.
rather than a sense of abundance and generosity.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if the oligarchic soul is so focused on holding on to what it has, can it ever truly experience contentment?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the next stage in Plato's spectrum, democracy.
Democracy.
Yeah.
Now we're talking, this is the system most of us are familiar with: freedom of speech, voting rights, individual liberty.
Right.
It sounds like a definite improvement from the rule of the wealthy few. What's a democratic soul like?
Socrates describes the democratic soul as loving freedom and variety.
Okay.
It's open to new experiences, tolerant of different viewpoints and values, individual expression.
Okay.
Think of the artist who defies convention, or the entrepreneur who forges their own path.
It's a soul that embraces change and thrives on the energy of new possibilities.
It is.
But didn't you say that Socrates saw potential pitfalls in democracy as well?
He did. He argued that an excessive focus on individual freedom can lead to a kind of chaotic individualism,
Okay.
where people prioritize their own desires above the common good.
Right.
He worried that democracy could foster a society that's undisciplined, easily swayed by emotion, and lacking in true leadership.
So even democracy, with all its emphasis on individual liberty, isn't immune to the dangers of imbalance and a loss of focus on the greater good.
No, it's not.
Where does this potential for chaos and instability lead?
Unfortunately, Socrates believed that democracy, if left unchecked, could pave the way for the most corrupt form of government.
Tyranny. Tyranny, the rule of a single individual who seizes power and governs based on their own whims and desires. It's a chilling thought, and sadly we see examples of it throughout history. What's a tyrannical soul like?
Socrates paints a pretty dark picture.
Uh,
He describes the tyrannical soul as being driven by insatiable desires,
yeah.
paranoia, and a lust for power.
Okay.
It's manipulative, ruthless, and often isolated from those it rules.
It's a soul that's completely out of balance, consumed by its own appetites and fears.
Yeah,
It's almost like a cautionary tale about what can happen when we lose sight of our better nature.
that's a great way to put it. And it's important to remember that Plato's intention wasn't to make us despair,
Right.
but to encourage us to think critically about the choices we make both individually and as a society. By understanding these different forms of government and the souls they reflect, we can strive to create a more just and harmonious world.
So what are like the key takeaways from all of this? It's a
Yeah.
lot to process.
It is one crucial insight is the importance of balance. Plato's spectrum of government reminds us that no single system is perfect,
Right.
and that every form of leadership has its strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding the right balance between freedom and order, individual expression, and the common good.
It's a balancing act that humanity has been grappling with for centuries.
It is.
Makes me think about our own society and the challenges we face.
Yeah.
Are we prioritizing the right things? Are we cultivating the kind of souls that will lead to a just and flourishing society?
Those are questions worth pondering. Another key takeaway is that true leadership isn't about power or wealth,
Okay.
but about wisdom, virtue, and a genuine concern for the well-being of all.
It all comes back to the individual, doesn't it?
It does.
No matter what system of government we live under, we can each strive to be more wise, more courageous in our own lives.
Absolutely. And that's the enduring power of Plato's Republic. It's not just a political treatise.
Yeah.
It's a guide to living a meaningful life in a complex and often challenging world. Right.
Wow, what an incredible journey this deep dive has been.
It has.
From justice and truth to the ideal state and the spectrum of governments, Plato's Republic is packed with ideas that continue to resonate thousands of years later.
It truly is a testament to the power of philosophical inquiry.
Listeners, I hope you're feeling as intellectually stimulated as I am. We've only scratched the surface of this monumental work, so I encourage you to continue exploring Plato's ideas on your own. Who knows, you might even discover your own inner philosopher king along the way. Until next time, keep questioning, keep seeking truth, and keep your minds open to new possibilities.